I'm Dan, this is Exploder, where Oklahoma isn't just a state, it's a horrible reminder. In this episode, we're going to cover pro wrestling in some of its not-so-savory places. Now, I'm not going to get hardcore and I'm not going to get dark. I'm here to talk about the lighter side of things. Pro wrestling's filled with a bunch of rookies, young guys trying to make a name for themselves, but over the years, there have been some rookies that didn't quite live up to potential. And I'm talking about wrestling rookies from the 1990s WWF. I'll get to other companies. Just try me on this one. In 1995, 1996, and even through 1999, there were a bunch of rookies who debuted who actually did very well for themselves and became stars. Who could forget the debut of guys like Edge, the Hardy Boys, and so on. However, there was also debuts of guys who didn't quite make the cut. So with that in mind, this episode is about the forgotten rookies of the WWF in the 1990s who ended up going nowhere. We're going to start off with one of the more ridiculous characters of the time, and believe me, that covers a lot of ground. Tony Anthony was the dirty white boy in Smoky Mountain Wrestling and made a convincing white trash character in Eastern Tennessee, which is saying something. When Smoky Mountain closed down because, it was 1994, Anthony got hired by the WWF. This, of course, being the time where the business was filled with a bunch of people who needed to have other jobs, even in the WWF, to make ends meet. They decided to bring Anthony in as a character. When working for Smoky Mountain, Anthony was apparently an actual plumber in real life. So the WWF deciding, instead of taking that information and just not exposing it, like things like The Miz can only smile after he strangled a puppy, allegedly. Nope, they decided to make it a gimmick. So Tony Anthony became TL Hopper. The TL stands for toilet lid, in case you were worried about some subtlety sneaking out there. Not now. He was not really well liked. Honestly, he would come to the ring carrying a plunger called Betsy, I believe. His best accomplishment, and I say this loosely, the best accomplishment was reenacting a Caddyshack joke in 1996 where a candy bar was used to simulate a turd. This was an above ground pool backstage at SummerSlam 1996 because there is no God. He later became Uncle Cletus as part of the Godwin clan, tried to interfere, was attacked by the Godwins, and was never seen again, and rightfully so. Flush on, Tony Anthony. Flush on. Now let's move on to one of the more interesting rookies from the time. I say rookie loosely because the man was Freddie Joe Floyd. The man behind the character was Tracy Smothers, who debuted all the way back in 1982. Yeah, 14 years before he became a rookie in the WWF. I guess they're really loose with that word over there. His name was Freddie Joe Floyd, which was a joke on the Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry, because their real names are Freddie Joe and Floyd. Hilarious. He was also from Bow Legs, Oklahoma, because that's where the Briscoes are from. Haha. And he was about as successful as everything I've just described. The man behind the gimmick, Tracy Smothers, would go on to greater success as a fake Italian who got into dance-offs. Up next is Alex Porto, a guy who actually debuted again in the 80s and was trained by Skandor Akbar of all people. Porto was portrayed as a strong amateur wrestler, even came to the ring to the song they used to use for the Steiner brothers. Yeah, exactly. His nickname was The Pug. Yes, Alex the Pug Porto. Now say what you want about animal-themed wrestlers, bees, stallions, bulldogs, pit bulls, name them. Doesn't matter. Some of them can be pretty cool. I mean, the 80s proved some of that, but the Pug really doesn't strike fear in the hearts of your enemies like you might think. What was he, short and had a weird-looking face? What was that supposed to accomplish? He didn't last long, about a year, and ended up teaming with such luminaries as Bob Sparkplug Holly and Aldo Please Not in the Face Montoya. So, we see how well that went. His greatest feat was appearing at WrestleMania as one of the fake John Cena's at WrestleMania 25. I think it still counts. Now back to the more odd rookies. Let's talk about the Stalker. Barry Windham was an NWA mainstay known for both being a four horseman and the one Windham that didn't go to jail in the early 90s. He came into WWE in the early 90s as the Widowmaker before leaving and going back to the NWA. He would then leave again, come back to the WWF, and be greeted as the Stalker. The Stalker was supposed to be like a Deadliest Game type person who hunted or stalked people, but really it didn't come off like that. It came off as like that one uncle who was really into hunting. What amazes me is that Windham came back with a mustache, and they painted his face with camouflage, and they camouflaged over the mustache. Like you couldn't shave the mustache? It just looked weird to me. That's just a personal opinion. It just looked weird. He wore hunting gear, and that's about it. It's been something when being one of the new Blackjacks isn't the worst gimmick you've ever had. The stalker didn't last long, but actually, in this case, that's a good thing. What can be said about Tiger Ali Singh? I'll say something. Indian $1 Million Man. That's all you can really say about Tiger Ali Singh. The son of Tiger Jeet Singh, a Canadian Indian man who ran around Japan with a sword. I'm going to repeat that, a sword. Tiger Ali Singh was seen as the potential to be a great superstar coming out of the WWF dojo, the same dojo that produced guys like Edge and Val Venus and others. They thought Tiger Ali Singh could be, and before Jinder Mahal, before the great Khali, Tiger Ali Singh was the first real Indian signing for the company, so people were excited. He won the Kuwaiti Cup back when that was a thing, and was given the gimmick of a rich Indian aristocrat, very similar to Ted DiBiase's $1 Million Man character. The problem was he couldn't get over because he didn't have anything Ted DiBiase had. Ted DiBiase was great in the ring, had charisma, was great on the mic. Tiger Ali Singh had none of these. None. He had the charisma of a block of cheese, assuming the block of cheese also didn't know how to throw a punch, and would pay people money to do humiliating things in a way that made me fall asleep in the front of my TV. He was flanked by his Indian manservant Babu, who, despite being in, let me repeat, Indian manservant, was played by Puerto Rican Pablo Marquez. Because in a business where an Italian can play both a Native American and a Middle Eastern person, anything's fair in wrestling. Isn't that right, Mr. Kopani? After realizing he really wasn't that great in the ring, the WWF put him as a manager of the team of Lowdown, of D'Lo Brown and former headbanger slash wife beater Chaz. Tiger Ali Singh wouldn't last much longer, and to be honest, I think we're all better off for it. Now it's time for Newsflash. Successfully dodging IRS since 1995. Former TNA star Chase Stevens recently beat up wrestler slash unsuccessful drug mule Brian Christopher in an Indiana hotel room. When asked why, Stevens reminded everyone that he used to be Grandmaster Sexay. Stevens was acquitted on the spot. Vince Russo offered his services to the Cody Rhodes slash Young Bucks event All In. His pitch involved the word bro 27 times and talked about all the great times he had in WCW. TNA. WWE brought him back for a day that one time. He has a podcast? Pass. Do-rag enthusiast Hulk Hogan said that he's ready to main event WrestleMania once again. That brings the number of people willing to see Hulk Hogan main event WrestleMania in 2018 to 1. Going into WrestleMania 34, Brock Lesnar is reportedly leaving the WWE for UFC again. Lesnar says he looks forward to doing the next thing that pays him millions of dollars to show up a couple times a year. That's all for Newsflash. Now, let's get back to the show. Mantar was the WWF's version of Vader. I'm going to say that again. Mantar was the WWF's version of Vader. He was the worst version, a version who couldn't do a moonsault, who couldn't win a match, and oh yeah, wore a buffalo head to the ring. Even putting him with Jim Cornette, who was in full scream mode, didn't save Mantar from being put down. The guy behind the character would return as a forgettable Gold Dust bodyguard, and then be the one member of the Truth Commission that didn't make television. That's right, he wasn't good enough for the Truth Commission. Think about that for a sec. Then again, considering who they have in it, he'll probably be in the Hall of Fame by the time you hear this. Do you like pro wrestling? Do you like magic? Do you wish the two would come together in an unholy union that should never be? Of course you don't. That's why you're gonna hate Fantasio. Fantasio was USWA wrestler Spellbinder, which is oddly enough a better name, who would come to the ring and do magic tricks on his way to the ring, on his way out of the ring. Heck, he'd do it during the match. Little gimmicky tricks that any 5-year-old would really find boring. He would pull people's underwear off without removing their pants, like the world's weirdest pickpocket. Unfortunately for Fantasio, his greatest trick was disappearing. Which brings us to who? Who's in the ring? That's right, who is in the ring? That's what I'm asking. Who is in the ring? Now imagine that for 6 minutes. Pretty annoying, huh? Who's on First was a classic comedy bit by Abbott and Costello. If you don't know who that is, wake up your grandparents and ask them what their parents told them about it. The whole bit is that there's a baseball player whose last name is Who, and there's shenanigans involved with people not understanding each other. Now, of course, in 1996, the WWF thought that's a great premise for a gimmick. So let's take Jim Neidhart and throw him in a mask and see what happens. It went about as well as you would expect from a joke based on a comedy routine from the 40s. It's saying something when Jim Neidhart's WCW career was better than this gimmick. Former WCW wrestler Max Payne debuted in the WWF as Man Mountain Rock, who played his own entrance music on a WWF-shaped guitar. And that's where the excitement ended. Mr. Rock would eventually be fired from the company for allegedly recording a lot of things behind the scenes, including some illegal activities, which led to his swift exit from the company. July 2003, he sued Rockstar Games for a reported $10 million for using the name Max Payne, which he actually had trademarked. He settled out of court. At least he won that. Continuing the trend of wrestlers being anything but actual wrestlers, it's the Goon. Bill Irwin, along with his brother Scott, were actually well-known wrestlers with many years under their belt. Bill liked to play hockey, which of course became his immediate gimmick. The Goon was supposedly a guy who played hockey and was kicked out of every major league for fighting too much. Yeah, the guy got kicked out of hockey for fighting too much. Sure. He came to the ring complete in hockey gear and boots that were made to look like hockey skates, which admittedly was a nice touch. He would throw off his gloves and attack his opponents, sometimes turtling them, as a hockey player would tend to do. Besides that, there's not much to the gimmick, and Irwin didn't last long. And that concludes the 1990s rookie class of awful. I'm sure I've missed a few. If I missed any, put them down in the comments, send me suggestions, what have you, future episodes, questions, whatever you want to do, and we'll get back to it. Until next time, my name is Dan, this has been Exploder. Have a good one.